Look up the word crazy in the dictionary and you might just find an asterisk beside the definition that says, listen to the Subiquitous podcast featuring Sue Duffield and you'll find out what crazy means. Sue's travelogue journey of unfiltered stories, impossible miracles, and faith-filled fun will be revisited right here. So buckle up and let's get going with this humorous travelogue of an unfiltered saint, Subiquitous.
How to be real without killing everyone around you. These are things that I have learned in my short little stint of about 53 years on the road, teaching, singing, worshiping, and being what I needed to be in the right circumstance, understanding the audience I'm singing or speaking to, and then also taking a chance of building relationships with people who don't think like I do or act like I do. So this little workshop that I'm going to share with you today on this podcast is actually what I'm going to do at America's Keswick for Women's Weekend next week. I call it the Introvert-Extrovert School. How to be real without killing everyone around you. A little promo here. I said I made a living studying and watching how people relate to one another. Whether you know it or not, I was featured in John C. Maxwell's book, Everyone Communicates and Few Connect. I also wrote a book called Subiquitous, a humorous travelogue of an unfiltered saint. And I also have been known to give guidance and even coaching women's ministry leaders around the country. The thing about this particular workshop that's going to separate the girls from the ladies is you're going to enjoy a very fast-paced, interactive workshop filled with a lot of humor, a lot of connection, and relational keys to help you better relate to your friends, family, and audience. And we can even go back to Psalm 26:2 just to kind of set the atmosphere here. Scripture says, "Examine me, God, from head to foot. Order your battery of tests and make sure I'm fit inside and out." The Apostle Paul also challenges us to be responsible to do our own evaluation. In 2 Corinthians 13:5, examine and test and evaluate your own selves to see whether you are holding to your faith and showing the proper fruits of it. So, while IQ is widely recognized as a measure of intellectual capability, I've worked my whole life on my EQ. And the EQ is focusing on the critical aspect of social and emotional skills. And EQ refers to your ability to understand and manage your emotions and empathize with others. And I know a lot of smart people that need a lot of help on their EQ. They are book smart, but when it comes to social settings, they need a lot of help. There have been over the years some good books written about the introvert-extrovert world that we live in. There's one recently that was written, it's called Quiet, The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking, and that's by Susan Cain. I highly recommend that one. There's also one called The Powerful Purpose of Introverts, Why the World Needs to Be an Introvert. Because we'll share in a little bit here just how important introverts are in our world. And there is The Introvert's Edge, How the Quiet and Shy Can Outsell Anyone. Good book by Matthew Pollard and Derek Lewis. So you might want to take notes, or you may just want to go back and say, I'll read the transcript on this. Are you, just a question, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Has someone told you your whole life you're shy? Have you ever been told you just blow up the room when you walk into it? Well, the question appears to be pretty simple, but you know what? There's a lot more to the introvert versus extrovert world than whether you think loud parties and concerts are the real deal and they bother you or they don't. While no one is a true introvert or extrovert, understanding the differences between the two can help you determine which plans you should keep for the evening and what ones you should cancel, as my good friend says. So an introvert gains energy from alone time. Raise your hand if you're like that. You would rather spend some time on your own with a good book and a blanket in front of a fireplace. Well, people who identify as introverts, they feel more energized when they have some time alone. And that word, actually, introvert, comes from the Latin word introvertere, which means to turn to the inside. That's not to say introverted people don't enjoy the company of others. They just need some downtime before and probably after a social event to decompress. And they even ruminate a little bit. So, you know what? You might be an introvert. There are lots of personality tests that you can take to determine exactly how introverted you are. But across the board, most introverts feel mentally and physically tired after a social event. They also prefer to work independently rather than in a group. And some are reflective about their feelings and reactions, but they're not too messed up if they're involved in a small group of close friends who they probably know. But it does take some time for them to warm up to new people. And you know what? They don't necessarily feel lonely when they're alone. Some of them feel lonely when they're in a group of people. I'll never forget an event I did several years ago. I walked into the room and I asked them, the very first thing out of my mouth was, how many here are extroverts? Oh my word, the world just, the roof was going to cave in. They just yelled and screamed. And then I said after that, how many here are introverts? And there were about maybe 30%. And I said, you know what? The 70% of you that are here with me this weekend, don't you dare kill those introverts. Give them a chance to think, to process, and to be present. So we all know that an extrovert gains energy from socializing. Extroverts feel more energized when they're around people. The Latin prefix extra means out, and meaning that extroverts turn to the outside for their energy. And while introvert appeared in English in the mid-17th century, its antonym, extrovert, was popularized during that time. So it's not even a thing of comparison, but it surely is turning from the outside to the inside. And extroverts don't mind a little downtime, but they'd really prefer to be the first one on the platform or the first one on the dance floor. Now, you might be an extrovert, and it's okay if you are, by the way. The good thing is no two extroverts are the same, and the majority of them feel happy and satisfied after a social event, or they do prefer to work in a group rather than individually. They like to talk about their feelings and reactions, and they don't mind a large group of friends. They make friends quickly and easily. They feel lonely and sad when they're all alone. I am a textbook extrovert. However, as I'm reading more and more and studying how I have evolved, I might be what they call an ambivert or an omnivert, and I'll talk about that in a second here. Most people find that they're somewhere in between true introverts and true extroverts. They're kind of caught in the middle. They feel happy and energized with their friends, but a little more reserved when they're in a big crowd. Or they love meeting new people, but need to spend some time alone before venturing out again. You know what? If you fall into that spectrum of personalities between introvert and extrovert, you may describe yourself as an ambivert, someone who is balanced between both introvert and extrovert and never feels the extreme. That's probably me. Omnivert is someone who can go back and forth between introvert and extrovert depending on the situation. That's Jeff. He can just kind of fit in where he needs to be. Now, which one is better? Here's the thing. Sadly, why do we always have to think one is better than the other? I don't know why we do that in our culture. While a combination of both introverted and extroverted traits is really perfect or ideal, there's no better personality to have. It's all about knowing yourself and how to recharge when you need energy. And just as importantly, you need to know how other people feel on that spectrum of introvert versus extrovert. As an extrovert, I have taken the time to study my introverted friends. I know how to respond to them. I'm not always successful, but I try. Your introverted friend may just need some time to recharge before going out with you. I had a friend tell me that once. While your extroverted friend may need some extra communication to feel comfortable in your friendship. So here are some pointers on how to talk to an introvert or an extrovert, or a loved one or a friend or a husband that might be a little on that spectrum where you're an extrovert and he's an introvert, or the opposite. So how to talk to your introverted loved one or friend from an extrovert point of view. Make a date to discuss how you can better talk. This gives the introvert time to prepare. If you have something that you want to talk to them about that maybe is a bit emotional, tell them in advance so that they have an idea what they want to say. The extroverts in the room, we don't have to think about what we want to say. We just think as we talk. Number 2, don't interrupt. It takes energy for introverts to start talking again. Boy, that's a tough one, but you really need to take advantage of that. Hear that friend out, then talk about your thoughts and feelings. Number 3, count to 5 and think before you speak. An introvert will remember what you say. I can tell you 100% of the time, the introverts, which I always believe are the smartest people in the room, they will remember exactly what you said. Repeat what you heard your partner or your friend saying so that you make it clear you were listening. Ask her or him if your, summation of the conversation is correct. And learn how to sit quietly sometimes in your loved one's presence. Remember, he or she may have depleted all their energy, but still wants to be with you. Your introverted friend or loved one is normally a good listener, but be sure he or she gets a turn to talk. Ask them what their day was like. Sometimes they need to be drawn out. Sometimes you have to ask the same question over and over again before you can get it. And occasionally communicate in writing. Introverts can take in written words with less overstimulation. A card by the phone, a note on the bulletin board, or a note in their lunch or suitcase or briefcase or pocket or pillow, whatever it takes, probably makes more sense and gives them a sense of value than any spoken word ever could. I enjoy pauses. I enjoy sitting. So share your friends' or loved one's space. How many times have you sat next to someone in a grieving situation? And Christians are really lousy at this, by the way, and it doesn't even have to be introvert or extrovert. We always think we have to say something. But specifically, if an introvert is going through something devastating, you have to just sit with them. Nonverbal communication is extremely effective with an introvert. Okay, so now, how to talk to your extroverted loved one coming from an introvert point of view. Well, tell your friend you want to talk. Set a date. It's the same thing. But this way, maybe they can process and get a little choked up about it, thinking, uh-oh. It's easy sometimes for extroverts to think the negative first. But you can practice short, clear sentences that will make it easier for your extrovert friend to listen to you. Don't be afraid to talk loud if you have to. Sometimes introverts, they talk very soft. But you may feel overstimulated, but sometimes your more extroverted friend or loved one won't trust that you mean something unless the volume is up. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from the Philadelphia market. We talk loud. We know we do. We even understand this form of communication. That's just the way we are. And we can be perceived as someone who's way out in the Midwest as being angry all the time. We're not. We just talk loud. But understand, you need to learn how to temper that. Practice saying anything that pops into your mind. It's a good thing for an introvert to try. Don't always rehearse. Practice that. And as an introvert's perspective, talking to an extrovert, allow pauses, and it's really okay not to keep up with the pace of your extrovert. Tell them you know it's difficult for him or her, and that you take time to make decisions, and that you don't always say what's on your mind. They'll like that. Write down your feelings on paper, give it to them, and if you feel strongly about an issue, you know what? Write it down for yourself as an extrovert, what you would say, and then present it to your friend or your husband or your spouse or whatever it might be. And you won't have so much trouble talking about it if you know what you're going to say. And remember, it really is not a bad thing to have feelings if there is a disagreement. I had to learn this the hard way. And especially in this politically charged environment that we are in right now, it's really okay to disagree, regardless of your personality type, as long as you understand that you're showing empathy. From an extrovert's point of view to the introvert, don't kill them. And from the introvert's perspective, talking to the extrovert, make sure you say what you want to say firmly and with a little bit of style, and I guarantee that person will listen. We all know that the psalmist says in chapter 51, 10 through 12, it says, "Create in me a clean heart and put a new spirit within me." That's what I pray for. No matter what my personality type might be, or whatever personality type you are, we're all in this together. And we need to know how to connect better and communicate better. And as John C. Maxwell says in his book, "Everyone communicates and few connect." Communication is not nearly as important, whether you're a singer, a speaker, an author. Communication is what everybody does. The whole world is communicating. But the difference is, I want to be a connector. I want to be that person that takes the time to listen and takes the time to understand and takes the time to evaluate whether or not I'm coming on too strong, or at the same time, am I being heard in the right manner? You can pray the wallpaper off the wall and you can read from Genesis to Revelation and have all that biblical knowledge. And what do we learn? You do all this stuff in my name, but yet you still don't know who I am. We've heard Jesus say that. So the critical part of this is not necessarily IQ, but EQ, and being social and being present and being honest wherever we are, whether it's in a big situation with hundreds of people or just one-on-one. God, how can I be better at communicating? How can I be better at sharing my heart? How can I be better at listening? How can I be better at not jumping the gun as an extrovert thinking everybody is against me? Introverts love to sit in the room and evaluate. And I watch it all the time, especially at women's retreats. The extroverts are the first ones to get there, and they're just wild. And the introverts kind of slowly walk into the room, and the first thing they're thinking is, I wonder where I'm going to sit, and I hope she's not going to call on me for anything. But what I find really brings us together is that connection piece called the Holy Spirit. And I pray over you today, wherever you are listening to this today, don't get hung up on being smart, but really take the chance to learn and to study and to be an expert on who you are and who God has made you to be, and take a little bit of time, and this is a little bit of a reprimand to all the extroverts that are listening. Give yourself permission to be quiet long enough so that your introverted friend can speak life into you. This Ubiquitous podcast is going strong. Once again, we are still amazed at the downloads and the people that are listening to this across the country. So we thank you in advance. Get on SueDuffield.com. And by far, if you have any questions as to whether or not you're socially acceptable, know that God is always there running the course and giving us opportunities to be ourselves. But not so much that if we beat somebody up or if we hammer somebody over their head or we're trying to make it all about us. Lord, help me to be humble in your presence. Help me, God, to be what Jesus wants us to be, and that is to be connectors. We'll see you next time.